Hi everyone, this is Dorothy, and in this video I'm going to give you a brief overview of the changes we've made to the Adult Consumer Survey for the 2015-16 survey cycle. I will start by telling you a bit about why we decided to make the changes. I will then say a little bit about the process we used to create the revised survey, and then I will talk a bit about things to remember when using the new survey. Then I will go into the changes. This video does not train on how to conduct interviews using the new survey. Rather, it is a more high-level view of the changes, aimed at providing you with a comprehensive view of the new survey and how the changes will improve the survey-taking experience, and ultimately provide more useful and applicable data. So why did we decide to make the revisions? We decided to make these revisions as a result of several factors, including internal NCI discussions, comments from participating NCI state contacts, feedback at trainings, and other expert opinions. Some of the feedback we received was from surveyors who engaged in administering this face-to-face survey. We were advised on alternate wordings and explanations to make the questions easier to understand. In the revisions, we also endeavored to make the survey more subjective. For example, in addition to measuring the number of times a person goes out into the community, we wanted to assess whether he or she went out as much as he or she wanted, and whether he or she got to go where he or she wanted to go. We also decided to move some questions around. We felt that because it is often families that work together on self-directing services, for example, it would be ideal to move the self-direction section to Section 2, for which a proxy may assist in providing answers. Another example is that we moved some of the rights and respect questions to Section 1 to get more subjective answers from the individual receiving services. We also added and reworded some questions to keep up with innovations in the field. For example, we've added some questions to assess the concept of meaningful day. Finally, we've added and reworded some questions to more explicitly help states assess their system-wide adherence to the new HCBS rules. So how did we go about making these revisions? Many of you listening to this presentation were instrumental in the revisions process, as we solicited feedback from many stakeholders during the revision process. To start, we collected notes internally on feedback we had received. We then met and created a draft that incorporated this feedback. We then sent the draft to experts for their assessment on our new questions. After incorporating that feedback, we sent a draft to our state contacts along with a link to a SurveyMonkey survey in which we asked our state contacts to input their feedback. We incorporated much of that feedback into another draft. We then had a final draft which we sent to our internal editor for refinement and graphic design. Once that was done, we took the tool out for 6 field tests in Massachusetts and in California, in which we shadowed interviewers who administered the survey. After observing the field tests, we incorporated the suggested changes and we landed on this final draft. As you use the new revised Adult Consumer Survey tool, please keep in mind the following. The changes we made may affect your ability to compare certain indicators to previous years. However, the revised survey was designed to capture expanded measures of quality and outcome information and better align with current systems. Another thing to note is that if you'd like to add state-specific questions to the survey, please add your questions in the correct location in the survey to a Word version of the survey tool, which I can provide. Please make sure to highlight those changes and then send the tool to me, Dorothy. My email is on the screen in yellow. We will begin incorporating the changes into the Odessa system, the online data entry system, on July 1st. So please allow for about 30 days after July 1st for those changes to be made in the system. If you've had questions incorporated into the survey in the past and you'd like to continue to have those questions in your state's version of the survey, please resend those questions to me, Dorothy. Send them again. They will not automatically be added to the 2015-16 Odessa system. I'm now going to go over some of the changes. I will remind you that the Adult Consumer Survey is made up of 4 parts. The first part is the pre-survey. The pre-survey includes information for the surveyor to become familiar with the individual to be surveyed. This includes information on addresses, information on guardian name, information on preferred communication technique, whether a proxy may be necessary, names of programs attended by the individual receiving services, names of local advocacy groups, etc. This information is not submitted to HSRI for analysis. The next section is the background information section. This information is usually collected before the face-to-face interview and often comes from agency records. This includes demographic information and information on services received. Section 1 is the first part of the face-to-face survey. It includes subjective questions on quality of life and services. It must be answered directly by the individual receiving services, and proxies are not allowed. Section 2 asks more fact-based questions about quality of life and services. Proxies are allowed in the administration of this section. This year, we have added the ability to enter pre-survey information into the Odessa system. This option was developed in response to requests from states to make the pre-survey info more accessible to surveyors and to use less paper. This information will still not be downloadable by HSRI and will not be included in data analysis. However, the pre-fill bell symbols throughout the survey, which point to places in the face-to-face survey that might be more easily asked if familiar terms are used, such as familiar names, places, etc., those spots will be filled in automatically if the information is entered in the pre-survey in Odessa. This information will be secure and encrypted. Please contact Steph for more information on this exciting new feature. You'll see her email address at the bottom of this slide in yellow. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the revisions we made to the background information section. To start, we combined the race and ethnicity question so that now there is only one question about race and ethnicity, as opposed to two, which we had in prior years. We used to have one question asking about ethnicity and one asking about race. We know that the census is also planning on combining these two elements, and we think it better reflects the ways that people self-identify. We also made some revisions to the questions about guardianship. We changed some language and added response options for people in states that do not differentiate between full and limited guardianship. We also added a follow-up question on the relationship of the guardian to the individual, being receiving services. We also added two questions, one about whether the individual receiving services is a parent, and whether he or she lives with his or her children. We refined and recategorized the type of residence question. We did this to more accurately capture the settings in which people are currently living. We also added some questions regarding residence to assist states in assessing HCBS regulation and rule compliance. We added, is this person's residence owned or controlled by a provider agency? If this person lives in ICF, a specialized institutional facility or group home, is it publicly or privately operated? Is the person named on the lease? Does the person own his or her own home? Has this person ever lived for longer than a year in an institutional setting, such as a nursing home or ICF? Regarding paid jobs in the community, we separated out individual jobs in the community and small group jobs in the community to more accurately capture individuals working in both settings. Within the survey, we defined a paid individual job in a community-based setting as a person working at an individual job in a local business alongside peers who do not have disabilities. This kind of job is part of the typical labor market, for example, competitive employment. We defined within the survey a paid small group job in a community-based setting as the activity is done in an integrated setting as part of a group of not more than 8 people with disabilities, for example, an enclave or work group. Moving on to Section 1. In Section 1, we moved things around slightly so that the section now begins with questions about the home instead of beginning with questions about employment. We did this because we heard that questions about home tend to be easier to answer and applicable to more people. We also added questions about employment and participation in workshops to get more detail on employment within NCI states. Regarding relationships, we added several questions about staying in contact with friends and family. We added questions asking about the reasons why an individual might not be able to see his or her friends when he or she wants to. We asked, do you have other ways of communicating with your friends when you cannot see them, like over the phone and through email? We ask, can you see and or communicate with your family when you want to? Can you pick the times you see them? Does someone help you make plans to see them? To Section 1, we also added some questions on community participation and leisure. With these additions, we aimed at assessing whether people get to do things they want to do as much as they want to. We ask, are you able to go out and do the things you'd like to do? Do you get to do the things you like to do as much as you like to do them? When you are at home, do you have enough things you like to do? Do you have things to do so you are not bored at home? We also added more specific questions about the service planning process to more directly address the new HCBS rules. For example, we ask, did you take part in the last service planning meeting? At the service planning meeting, did you know what was being talked about? Did they use words you understood? Did they have the meeting in your preferred language? And did the service planning meeting include the people you wanted to be there? We moved some of the more subjective questions about rights to Section 1 so that they are asked directly of the individual receiving services, and proxies cannot answer them. For example, these are the questions we moved from Section 2 to Section 1. Do people read your mail or email without asking you first? Can you be alone with friends or visitors at your home? Are there rules about having friends or visitors in your home? Can you use the phone or internet when you want to? In Section 2, we changed the format of the community inclusion questions. Previously, as you'll remember, we asked, how many times has this person gone shopping in the past month? And had a text box to write in a number. And then we asked with whom they went shopping, for example. We are now asking it in this format, giving ranges for the response options. In addition, we eliminated the question about exercising in the community and added a question about participation in community groups. To Section 2, we also added some questions about rights. Again, these are added to directly address some of the HCBS rule. We also added the question about physical activity that was previously in the background section. We moved it to Section 2 because we heard that this information about physical activity was not readily available in agency records. Finally, we moved the self-direction questions to the end of Section 2 as a module. Previously, these questions were only asked of individuals who are participating in a self-direction waiver. We now have it set up so that they will be asked of everyone who is self-directing. We added some questions to the self-direction section, such as, do you participate in decisions about how to use your supports budget, hiring staff, or managing the services you get? Do you self-direct your supports? Who makes decisions about how your budget for services is used? Do you hire and manage your staff? Managing staff includes telling them what time to come to work, what their duties are, giving feedback about whether they're doing a good job, and firing staff. Do you have enough help deciding how to use your budget and services? This concludes the video overview of the changes to the Adult Consumer Survey for the 2015-16 survey cycle. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, Dorothy. My address is here. We hope that you'll find these changes will provide more useful and applicable data. Thank you.